December 7, 1941, a date that will live in infamy. This was the day when the calm of Pearl Harbor was shattered by the roar of Japanese fighter planes. This attack on a tranquil Sunday morning catapulted the United States into the fiery chaos of World War II. An event of such magnitude, it forever imprinted itself on the annals of history. Pearl Harbor, an idyllic harbor nestled in the island of Oahu, Hawaii, was more than just a picturesque paradise. It was a strategic military base for the United States, a linchpin in the Pacific. The events leading up to that fateful day were a complex web of political maneuvering, strained relations, and escalating tensions. The repercussions of the attack were far-reaching, setting the stage for a global conflict that would shape the course of the 20th century. But what if this defining moment in history never happened? What if Japan didn't attack Pearl Harbor? Rewind to the years before 1941, and we find a Pacific teetering on the brink of war. The United States and Japan, two formidable powers with contrasting ideologies and ambitions, are locked in a dance of diplomacy and militarization. The relationship between these nations is strained, to say the least, as they grapple with the complexities of power, territory, and resource control. Japan, with its eyes on expansion, is hell-bent on securing dominance in the Pacific. Its motivations are clear: to break free from Western influence and establish a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. The vision is grand, but the path is fraught with obstacles. Japan needs resources, especially oil, to fuel its ambitions, and it's looking to Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands to meet its needs. But there's a problem. The United States, with its own Pacific interests, stands as a formidable roadblock to Japan's expansionist dreams. The US has economic and strategic interests in the Pacific, and is not about to let them slip away without a fight. The tensions are rising, and the Pacific is becoming a powder keg waiting to explode. And then there's Pearl Harbor, a gem in the Pacific, a strategic military base for the United States. It's a thorn in Japan's side because of its potential to disrupt Japan's expansion plans. The US Pacific Fleet, stationed there, is a formidable force, capable of launching a devastating counterattack on Japan, should it decide to act on its ambitions. Pearl Harbor is not just a military base. It's a symbol of American power in the Pacific. It's a deterrent, a warning to any nation with aspirations that conflict with American interests. For Japan, an attack on Pearl Harbor is not only an act of war against the United States, but also a bold statement to the world about its own power and resolve. But imagine a world where Japan decides against attacking Pearl Harbor. What would that look like? In this alternate timeline, Japan pursues different strategies to achieve its objectives in the Pacific. It's a fascinating concept, isn't it? A world where the bombs never fell on Pearl Harbor, where the ships remained afloat. But let's not forget, a world without the Pearl Harbor attack doesn't necessarily mean a world without conflict. Japan's objectives in the Pacific were driven by a desire for expansion and resource acquisition. But without the attack on Pearl Harbor, how would they have gone about it? Perhaps through diplomacy and political maneuvering. They might have sought to form alliances, to negotiate trade deals, to use soft power rather than military might. They could have capitalized on existing tensions between the West and the East, attempting to drive a wedge further between these two powers. And what about the United States? How would they have responded? The US had already imposed severe economic sanctions on Japan, hindering their war effort in China. Without the catalyzing event of Pearl Harbor, would the United States have maintained these sanctions? Or would they have sought to negotiate a resolution with Japan, aiming to alleviate the tensions in the Pacific without resorting to war? However, it's important to remember that the US was not oblivious to the turmoil in the Pacific. They were already preparing for potential conflict, strengthening their military presence in the region. Even without the attack on Pearl Harbor, it's possible that the US would have eventually been drawn into the war, perhaps in response to other Japanese aggression in the Pacific. Now let's consider the international ramifications of Japan's decision. Without the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States might have delayed their entry into World War II. This could have altered the balance of power in Europe, potentially prolonging the war there. And without the US as an active participant in the war, other nations might have felt emboldened to pursue their own expansionist agendas, leading to a very different global political landscape. Domestically, Japan's decision not to attack Pearl Harbor could have had significant implications. There were factions within Japan that were staunchly militaristic and saw war with the United States as inevitable. A decision to refrain from attacking might have sparked internal conflict, potentially leading to a power shift within the government. It might have even led to a civil war, pitting those who desired peace against those who clamored for war. So you see, a world without the Pearl Harbor attack would not simply be a world at peace. It would be a world of political maneuvering, of diplomatic posturing, of nations trying to assert their dominance without resorting to all-out war. It would be a world of uncertainty, where the balance of power could shift at any moment, where tensions could boil over into conflict at the slightest provocation. This shift in strategy would have ripple effects across the globe. Let's delve into what those might be. Because every decision, every action, every choice we make, they all have consequences. And in the grand theater of world history, those consequences can echo across the centuries, shaping the world in ways we can only begin to imagine. In the absence of the Pearl Harbor attack, the world map of World War II would likely be redrawn. Let's picture this alternate timeline. In the short term, without the shock of Pearl Harbor, the United States might have remained on the sidelines of the war a bit longer. Their delayed entry could have given Axis powers more time to consolidate their positions, potentially altering the balance of power in Europe and the Pacific. Japan, having decided against attacking Pearl Harbor, would likely have pursued other strategies to advance its objectives. Perhaps they would have focused more on the conquest of Southeast Asia, seeking to secure vital resources to fuel their war machine. In this scenario, diplomatic negotiations would have taken a different course. Without the direct attack, the United States might have continued its policy of economic sanctions against Japan, hoping to curb its expansionist ambitions without resorting to all-out war. However, Japan's continued aggression in Asia could have eventually led to a clash with the US and its allies, albeit under different circumstances. The ripple effects of these changes would be felt around the globe. In Europe, a delayed US entry into the war could have given Germany a stronger hand against the Allies. In the Pacific, the absence of a direct attack on US soil might have led to a less aggressive American response, possibly allowing Japan to establish a stronger foothold in Asia. In the long term, these changes could have drastically altered the post-war world order. Perhaps the Cold War would have taken a different shape, or maybe it wouldn't have happened at all. Perhaps decolonization in Asia and Africa would have proceeded differently. The possibilities are endless and fascinating to ponder. The course of history is shaped by pivotal moments and decisions. Pearl Harbor was undeniably one such moment. In its absence, we can only speculate how different the world might be today. But one thing is certain, even the smallest change can have profound effects on the course of history. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a turning point in world history, propelling the United States into a war that would reshape the world. As we've ventured into the realm of what-ifs and might-have-beens, we've seen a different world, a different course of history, one that could have unfolded if Japan hadn't made the fateful decision to attack Pearl Harbor. We've traveled down alternate paths, seen different strategies play out, and pondered over the ripple effects that could have spread across the Pacific and beyond. We've seen the potential for different diplomatic entanglements, different military campaigns, and a distinct course for World War II. But the undeniable fact remains, Pearl Harbor was a monumental event that definitively shaped the course of history. It's a stark reminder of the catastrophic consequences of war, the intricate dance of diplomacy, and the pivotal moments that can change the world. What are your thoughts on how history might have unfolded if Japan hadn't attacked Pearl Harbor? Share your thoughts in the comments below.